Welcome to another episode of Sports Card Insights from Dr. James Beckett here with Rich Klein. This is another one of our tribute episodes. I can't say we enjoy it in every sense, but we do enjoy honoring those who've gone before us, friends that we had known for many years in the industry, for me for sure, with Wayne Varner, as you can see from the title of the episode, a real mainstay, not just in the Pittsburgh area, but also nationally and regionally. So I'd bump into him. I bought cards from him. I'm sure I've sold cards to him. I've gotten price input from him and his cohorts, and a great guy, and passed away a week ago. So let me thank the sponsors first before Rich and I engage and give you some insights and about Wayne. Beckett Media, thank you. Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, thank you. ComC, thank you as well. Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Panini, Topps, and Upper Deck. Thank you, sponsors. Well, today's episode is a tribute to Wayne Varner, who just very, very recently passed away. He was very much a vintage dealer, and at least for the longest time, he wasn't much of a grading customer. He was just more of a straight shooter dealer who sold quality cards from the kind of the golden age, a lot of vintage stuff. What's your recollection?
And I remember after one show you went to, and I think you probably bought them from his partner, Bill Zimpelman.
I bought a lot of stuff from Bill and Mike Weed as well.
You come back with this amazing cachet of type cards that I had never seen before.
Huh.
And they're in these holders, and they're in whatever holders they use. And those cards are...
Oh, right. Because they labeled their holders.
They labeled all their holders.
They didn't grade them, but it was like in a yeah.
And that was one of the coolest show finds. That, I will tell you, at that price level, that was something you needed to do and not me.
Well, they had great stuff, and they knew two things about Wayne is, one, he was always generous with helping, he and his partners, to help with the price input on the price guides. But when I see a guy who's working very closely with two other guys, and they're all three seemingly quality guys, when I see somebody that's not the Lone Ranger, that's working together in a high trust relationship with a lot of money sitting on the table, and those guys working together, that speaks to the character of each of those guys. Now, I don't know that they were always in lockstep together, but for many of the years, they were, one would be at the table and exchanging money, and they had expensive stuff. And they were very knowledgeable.
And I will tell you, I knew his partner, Bill Zimpelman, a bit better because Bill and I could go on stories. Bill is a music guy. He owned a record store before he went into baseball cards. And we share a love of the old music. And I remember at one show, there was some deal, at one of the Nationals, there was a dealer from Colorado who hosted his own oldies radio show on Sunday night. And I come back and I show Bill, look what this guy just gave me, because he kept a couple of air checks. And it turned out that Bill was actually jealous of the fact that I had beaten him to getting the air check because, he also in Pittsburgh would go to these, if you ever watch public television, a lot of times they have these oldies concerts where they bring out the artist for one or two songs. Well, they'd be taped in Pittsburgh, a lot of them. Bill would go to them. So he would tell me the stories of sometimes it would be 2 or 3 nights and they'd have to wear the same clothes or the same color 3 straight nights just because the TV, you didn't want to have the audience pan to see different colors. But one thing about Wayne was another of my mutual friends, a collector, a dealer who grew up very near them in Pennsylvania, Dave Zuba, last year at the National wanted to see Wayne. And Wayne, you could tell he was sick at the time, and he wanted to chase down Dave. I said, no, I'll call Dave. We will come to see you. You've earned that respect. Yeah. And I got a hold of Dave, and they spent probably a good hour talking. Oh, that's and I was very happy that I was able to facilitate that conversation.
Well, Pittsburgh always had a warm spot in my heart because that's where I went to kindergarten through 4th grade. And that's how come I loved Roberto Clemente. But I didn't know I knew collectors in my neighborhood, but there wasn't any organized hobby. This would be in the 50s. So then I moved away. And then the years when I was up in Bowling Green and traveling around as a young professor, a lot of overlap with Bill and Wayne and Mike. And they had Pittsburgh stuff. They had Clemente stuff. So I was always wanted to hit their table, and they were always courteous, always knowledgeable, and Wayne, just was they just were good guys. But you were telling me that Wayne was from Zelian Opal.
That's correct.
which is where I went to camp.
I want to hear about this camp.
It was YMCA camp. Yeah, I went there.
Was it a sleepaway or was it a day?
It was a sleepaway. Yeah, we went for like a week. I think that was.
I've got to ask a really silly question. Down here in Dallas, we have what they call like vacation Bible schools during the summer. Was being at the YMCA for a summer camp sort of like a vacation Bible school, since it's Young Men Christians Association?
Well, I think the C was silent.
Okay.
In those days, which it is in some parts of the organization. It seems like maybe it's a local option, but I'm sure they said grace over the food or something. But it was just a bunch. It was all boys, and I remember one maybe on the weekend your dad came, so I remember my dad coming, and it was a great experience. But it was not in. It was kind of out and about. It wasn't in Pittsburgh proper. But
most summer camps
are. But again, Wayne was well organized. I wouldn't say he was. I mean, he was aggressively priced without. I mean, he kind of knew what the market was, and he was very condition sensitive without being. I mean, he personally graded the cars. I don't know if he did it or Bill did it, but they were graded, and you could see he'd have 5 of a different of a 57 Aaron, and they would be 5 different conditions as evaluated by him, and he was a good enough grader that people could trust.
You know, nobody ever likes to speak ill of anybody who's no longer with us, but Bill had mentioned to me on Facebook when I saw the post and I put on the popular for pre-war collectors Net 54 message board that Wayne had passed, and there are still responses coming in a week later, which shows you just the character of the man and how everybody says such positive things. And Bill sent me this Facebook message. I can't get onto Net 54 right now. I said, Bill, don't worry. I've already posted this for you. And so I'm glad I was able to help and show Wayne, where he is now, that people really respected him and appreciated he was a collector too. He was a collector before he became a dealer.
Another thing, and because maybe it's not, I'm obviously older than you. It's obvious to me anyway. I mean, that's why I'm doing an audio podcast, but Wayne stood the test of time.
Yes, he did.
I mean, he was there in the 70s, and he was, again, and this is an industry that, I'm not railing against people that cut corners, but there are some people that cut corners, and you don't last in this industry for 40 years and be in a position of respect if you're cutting corners. If you're doing that, you will be found out. And so Wayne was a straight shooter from the beginning and had excellent partners, and they had a lot of repeat business. And to me, that's the way to make it in this industry, not to trick somebody into a sale, but to have good stuff. And Pittsburgh, they owned the Pittsburgh market practically. I mean, I think that if there was a collection for sale in Pittsburgh, I don't remember very many buying trips going into Pittsburgh when people did those things, because those guys had it covered.
And they did a good job, and they probably paid very fair. And it's funny, you and I talk about the 70s. I did my first show in 1979 when I was still in college. You were doing price guides by 1979. So, when we talk about being in the 70s, that's a long time ago on several levels, but it also shows, we were there almost as the hobby was really beginning to explode.
Well, and Wayne was there too.
Yes.
And Wayne was a little bit older than me. And
I think he's about 5 years older than you.
Maybe, yeah, probably that sounds about right. But he, like I said, it's just nobody lives forever. I'm hoping he had and thinking he probably had some good estate planning kinds of things. When you have partners and you have trusted people in your life, then when you pass, whether it seems like it's always untimely, but when you do, you've got someone that can help organize. And I feel bad for the people that don't have that situation. We've talked about dedicating a future episode to what happens to when the person passes away and it's a widow situation, doesn't know what to do and may have just confusion and not knowing who to trust. Wayne knew who to trust, and hopefully there's an orderly situation there.
And as you said, he was always very helpful with the pricing. His catalogs were wonderful to see. You never heard any complaints about cards not being as ordered or as offered, and you didn't hear about shipping issues or anything. He had a pretty good setup, and the fact that he was always considered so honorable was a big help.
I think that, like I said, that really matters. I mean, we always want to be positive tone here, but when something's 99% great and 1% a problem, it's important to deal with the 1%, not necessarily dwell on it, but to deal with it. And Wayne was not part of that 1%. And hopefully, like I said, when people do mess up, I hope they get found out.
And let's be honest, since none of us are perfect, we're all going to make mistakes in that 1%, but it's what you do with that 1% mistakes you make that really matters.
Well, good point. I bet I wouldn't say that Wayne and Bill would say that they never had a card returned.
Yeah.
Because that's probably, the adage that the customer's always right is, just want to go on the record of saying that's not true. The customer's not always right. But if you act as if the customer's always right in almost every situation, then they want their money back, you'd give them their money back. And I'm sure Wayne did that. So, another hobby legend, not with us. He wasn't at the National. I guess he was would you say his priority was probably in the high 30s?
Yeah, I would say he was way up there. He always he was a table in the front of the room.
Right. So that he would have been at, that's, again, when I was way more active back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I saw him regularly. And he was a lot of the same show circuit in the Midwest when I was doing that. And then in the price guide years, of the heaviest years, maybe even before you came, I would say, Rich, I was doing a lot of that traveling and I was going to the big shows. Wayne was there.
And I would see you in New York about once a month in those days.
Well, it wasn't once a month, but it was
close.
It was a lot. It was a lot because that's really where the action was. And Wayne and those guys would be there as well, for the bigger shows. But, what do you think about, his legacy?
I think his legacy is a good person who, as I said, when we looked at the Net 54 things, a lot of people said really positive things about how he conducted his business and nobody had anything negative. And I think.
But he wasn't flamboyant.
He wasn't flamboyant, but
he wasn't sensational. He wasn't controversial.
He's the type of person the hobby needs. Mark Harwell used to talk about at one point he wanted everybody at Beckett to be a type A personality. You need a couple type B personalities in the hobby too. And Wayne was aggressive but conservative, and he was almost more of a type B. Hey, I've got good cards. People will buy them. I don't have to be flamboyant. They have a catalog. I have mail order. And he was closer to type B than type A.
That's interesting. I think I would accept that, and Bill Zimpelman as well, because they were almost always together, and they both had a real heart for customer service. And again, when you're selling something that you know really well, you can explain it patiently. You can dive deep with your customer if you need to, and so they weren't just collectors or non-collectors who were selling the latest hot item. They were lifelong collectors.
And I think that has something to do with the material they carried, and I think that appealed to the collectors that bought from them.
I think it did. So life well lived, Wayne Varner. We miss you again. Thanks for gracing our hobby, our industry with your presence for so many decades. So again, thanks, Rich, for being here.
Thank you, Jim.
And thank you, listeners, for listening in on another tribute episode. If you've got questions or comments about this or any of the other episodes, you can email me at drjamesbeckett@gmail.com. That's DOCTOR and then James Beckett, and I'd be happy to respond appropriately. So again, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow.